I wish I knew these 10 baking tips that no one seems to be talking about. So, these 10 baking tips that I'm going to share with you have truly been a lifelong journey, baking journey for me. And all because it all boils down to the understanding, gaining the knowledge, the practice, developing the skill sets in the baking process and steps itself, so that you can get those consistent, light, fluffy, soft cakes and enjoying and becoming a confident baker, and enjoying as well the space inside your kitchen as you are baking as a home baker. So, in the description down below, my first video where I was introducing myself, sharing with you the baking journey, the lessons, the tips that I want to share with you that have also helped me become a confident baker and produce, those consistent light fluffy cakes, that my friends, family members, and even some of my customers in my baking journey come on repeat because they enjoy them. And this has led me to really become that confident baker who enjoys spending time in the kitchen, because now I am producing good results for the cakes, which are light and fluffy and soft. So if you want to watch that video, you'll find it. I'll link it in the description down below. You can check out that video to see, that confidence build up. So only starting something new, having a goal that you want to achieve, comes down to taking the step forward, having just the courage to just go for it, start. As I gave an example in that YouTube video, that it took me so long to record a video. Everybody goes through fears. Everybody goes through, self-sabotage. Everybody goes through imposter syndrome. Those things, when you realize that, it's just showing you that there's something you need to learn. There's something that you need to understand about. And it's just all a matter of you just taking action and putting your step forward, and just actually just taking time and space to, give time to yourself to learn, to grow, to improve, to develop, and to enjoy, building on your baking skill set. So with that being said, let's go to the 10 tips that I'm going to share with you that I wish I knew before my baking journey, before I started baking, and that no one seems to be talking much about. So let's go to the first one, number 1, which is the preparation stage. Understanding how to prepare yourself, to prepare your ingredients, to prepare your tools, to prepare the space in your kitchen before you start baking. Understanding how to really read, understand the recipe that you are going to follow in your baking time. Understanding what is in the baking recipe itself, the measurements, what ingredients you need to get, making sure that you actually get those ingredients. Because if you go through preparing and going through your recipe, you'll be able to know, okay, which recipes you need to get, which tools you will need to get, and understanding all that, the ingredients, the measurements, and the directions and methods. That will help you to plan out your time for your baking and for every step of the process. This will also help you in the case where, if you go through the recipe, you understand. If you don't have enough ingredients, maybe let's say you don't have enough sugar, or maybe you don't have enough eggs, it will give you time to go and get those from the shops, or if you're using shops or wholesalers or whatever cake supply shops, it will give you time to also prepare to get all your ingredients ready, and to also make sure that you have all the tools ready. And then number 2, hygiene, and it's very important when you are handling food. So you will need to also make sure that you have all your safety gear, like your hair nets or your hair tied back. You cover your hair, because sometimes even if you just tie your hair back, you can have different strands of hair falling in the food, falling on your cake batter, falling on your frosting as you're working. So you will need to make sure that you also prepared your aprons It's always nice to have an apron with a front pocket or pocket on the side where you have also a nice clean kitchen cloth for when you are working, always to wipe your hands, and also food grade gloves to always cover your hand as you're handling your cake. This is also important. So, step number two, the important tip number two, is always to make sure that you have all the tools that you need for your baking. Prepare them well on time in advance. Do you have all the baking tools? Baking pan, the right size of baking pan, the material, let's say you are going to grease and line your pan, the baking paper or parchment paper, your pastry brush for greasing your pan, scissors to cut your baking paper. If you're not, let's say you're using a round cake pan, or maybe you are greasing and dusting, or maybe you are just using a non-stick spray, make sure you have all the proper tools for your baking. Make sure you have all the proper tools for your measuring. For example, if your recipe maybe is in grams, it's nice to have an electronic kitchen scale because it will give you those accurate metric measures in volume, in grams, because an electronic kitchen scale will help you to measure that correctly in grams. And also maybe measuring cups, if you are measuring in milliliters, measuring spoon, you have a standard set of measuring cups and measuring spoons. Okay, so make sure that you have all these tools. Let's say, for example, now mixing tools, also like for mixing tools, do you have now, are you using a stand mixer, are you using a hand mixer, are you using just a normal whisk, or spatulas? Are you using wooden spatulas, plastic spatulas? Do you have all your bowls ready for putting all your wet ingredients in, the others for your dry ingredients? Do you have a sieve or sift for when you're sifting and aerating, for example, your ingredients? So understanding all these different tools is also very important. That's tip number two. And now also, when we get to now tip number three, which is learning to preheat your oven properly. We all know preheating, like if you have been baking, preheat is very important so that you get your oven ready, the temperature ready, so that by the time you have prepared your cake batter, once you put your cake batter in the oven, the temperature is already set so that it can now start the baking process nicely. But there's a tool also that will help to make sure that the temperature inside your oven, remember this is dry heat we are using, and we are using different oven types. Some ovens are electric conventional ovens, some uses fan ovens, other uses gas oven, but you always want to make sure that the temperature inside your oven is accurate. And one tool that I also learned, but I didn't know about before, I only learned about this very important tool that helps me to calibrate my oven. It is called a high temperature thermometer. That one will help as well to calibrate your oven nicely, because before that, you wouldn't know. Sometimes you are baking properly, your cakes come. Otherwise, all these inconsistent baking outcomes. Sometimes the cake burns, sometimes it's underbaked, or because the temperature, sometimes you don't know, you are just guessing because you're just turning the knob, and when you turn in the knob, you're just releasing the heat into the oven. But this high temperature thermometer, I'll give a story of myself. I didn't know that before. So when I started using the high temperature thermometer, I noticed that when I turned my knob to 180 degrees Celsius and I put the high temperature inside the oven, remember you close the door as you put the high temperature inside the oven, and it stays in the oven throughout your baking period, because it will help you to make sure that the temperature is at a steady, for example, 180 degrees Celsius if you are baking at 180 degrees Celsius. So step number 4 is to make sure that you're always baking in the middle of your oven and on the middle rack. And always make sure that you space out your cake pans. If you're putting more than two cake or more than one cake pan in your oven, make sure that you space them out. They're not touching each other, to allow the heat to circulate evenly throughout the cake batter, okay, in your cake pans, so that they'll bake equally. And also because ovens, they have a way of having hot spots. For example, the conventional ovens, Sometimes the heat is down below or at the top, and there's always hot spots. Same like even sometimes with the fan ovens or even whatever oven you're using, there may be hot spots in the oven. So it's always important to always bake in the middle rack and in the middle of the oven, so that you make sure that you always pay attention to all these things, and make sure that you always make sure you get everything done correctly, following each of these steps properly. Now let's go to number 5. Are you also following the timing set for each mixing step? Let's say it says mix for 5 minutes or 3 minutes. Don't overmix, don't undermix. Learn to have soft hands. Be patient with each step, and be patient making sure that you really pay attention to all these details for the steps that you are making. Always it's important to make sure that you have a kitchen timer, or you can use your phone as an alarm, or something that will help you to time the duration of everything that needs timing. Sometimes, for example, you are baking and then you get busy with other tasks or other chores at home. You forget that you are baking, then you burn your cake. But if you have a kitchen timer, you set the alarm, it will go off, and making sure that you don't go far away from your kitchen, you don't go far away from your baking, because you always need to make sure that when the time is up, you remove your cake from the oven. And then step number 6, know also how to check that your cake has baked through properly. How do you do that? You can either use a skewer can be metal skewer, or toothpicks or cake stick. I prefer these ones. Some people use a just normal cutlery knife to poke through your cake, and then when the skewer comes out clean, it will show that your cake is baked. But with a knife, it will leave, like large marks on your cake. That's why skewers like these toothpick or just normal metal skewers, because they're tiny, they'll just poke a tiny hole and they won't leave a huge mark on your cake. So checking that as well, and checking the consistency of your cake batter. Knowing how to check the consistency of your cake batter is also very important. Knowing how to check the consistency of your frosting, like for example, buttercream, is very important. So these are the steps that are important. And then step number 6, understanding the cooling process. Knowing that you have the cooling racks, the tools, knowing that once you remove your cake from the oven and you have checked that it has baked through, and once it has baked through, you cool it there in your pan for 10 minutes. Let it normalize the temperature so that it cools off normally, at the room temperature. Then after 10 minutes, that's when you remove your cake from your cake pan and put it now on the cooling rack so that it cools completely. Let it cool completely. Don't be patient, don't be in a rush. Let it cool completely. And then after cooling, that's when then you can either serve your cake as it is, because some people prefer just plain cakes. Or if you are now planning to decorate your cake, now it's time to prepare your cake, which goes now to step number 7, learning how to store your cakes properly. Cover your cakes nicely, wrap tightly in a cling wrap, and put in a tight container with a lid. When you put it in the fridge, it will firm up nicely. It will be safe from any other odors or smells in the fridge, and it won't dry up because now it is sealed inside. Because remember, the cold air helps to evaporate the air, and from the food. So if you leave your cake, you just put your cake like that in the fridge without covering it and securing it nicely in a container or cling wrap, it will dry up because of that. And make sure that your cake is not around foods like other foods like onions, meats, because those also have smells, and they will contaminate your cake and let your cake to spoil quickly, and to also catch those other smells, and you don't want cake smelling of other foods. So that's a nice cooling step. Now step number 8, once you have stored and cooled your cake, now it's time to understand the process before you decorate your cake. Which type of frosting are you using for that type of cake? Then prepare your frosting. Is it buttercream? Are you making American buttercream, for instance? Know how to make your American buttercream. Prepare that so that it is well prepared before you start covering your cake or decorating your cake. Are you using whipped cream frosting? Know how to make these different types of frosting. And also now when it comes to the before frosting your cake, understand how to tot your cake, totting, cutting your cake in layers, 2 layers, and understand the process. Some people just use cake slices, other use the normal way, you use a serrated knife, and you also use coccyxes, toothpicks, so that you can make sure you measure your cake layers equally in half, for example. Know how to do that, how to tot your cake, and know as well how to level your cake and what tools are you using to tot, what tools are you using to level your cake. After that, now it's important for you to go to step number 9 as well, knowing how to crumb coat your cake. Crumb coating is just applying just a thin layer of frosting. Let's say it's American buttercream, just a thin layer around your cake, just to catch those crumbs around your cake, so that they set nicely around your cake, so that when it's time for you to apply the final coat, your final coat, it comes clean on your cake. It doesn't have crumbs as well showing up, getting caught in the final coat. So understanding that step, how to crumb coat your cake, is always important. And also understanding the different cooling steps in between, because after you crumb coat, you also put your cake now in the fridge to set so that it cools nicely, so that the crumb coating really firms out nicely around the cake. And then when it comes to the 10th step, understand, always have a plan before you decorate your cake of the type of decorating style or design on your cake, so that when now it's time to apply the final coat to decorate your cake, know what tools you have prepared, know what tools you are using, know what colors or tones or hues of your buttercream, for example, you'll be using for that cake. So these are the 10 tips that I wish I knew before I started my baking. And after learning all these tips, they have really helped me. So I hope that, with this video, with these 10 tips, you have found this video helpful. And if you have enjoyed this video and found the 10 tips helpful, please subscribe, like, and share this video to other friends, family members, so that they can also come here and learn from this channel. So thank you. And this is my second video here on the channel to help other first-time home bakers out there. So thank you. And if you have enjoyed, let me hear in the comments how many of these tips have you found helpful, all of them. How many have you been doing, and how many have you realized that you need to understand more about them, so that I can continue making more helpful videos to help you in your baking journey. So once again, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.